Hello, women's basketball fans. Welcome to a special edition of Gold Medal Dispatch, which is our newsletter on the Olympics. Right now, of course, it is Paris 2024, but the idea is to use the Gold Medal Dispatch pop-up newsletter every time we're covering the Olympics. My name is Erica L Ayala. I am with Roberta Rodriguez, and we are excited to be recording just days before the start of the quarterfinals in women's basketball, the Olympic tournament. The men's tournament is actually going to start, I believe, the day before on Tuesday. The women's tournament starts on Wednesday. But of course, we here at Black Rosie Media are going to be locked in on the women's tournament. That being said, we are here. We made it work. We found a time that works for us both, and it happened to fall just before the quarterfinals, Roberta. So we're going to talk about that. But first, as we always do on Black Rosie Media Women's Basketball Podcast, we are going to do the Shootaround. And that's just talking about some news and notes in women's basketball, or just things that, quite honestly, we want to talk about. So we're actually going to go to a bullet point that you have up first. So what is the most pressing question, Roberta?
So what has it been like over there in Lille? Have you connected with other media members from the US? How did you feel about, I know the arena was sold out for women's basketball. What has your experience been like? I am very curious to hear about it, and I'm sure that Black Rose Media's listeners are also very curious, because we just appreciate you a lot, and we want to hear your about your experience.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate the question. And I'll start by just saying I really appreciate the question, because when I covered the Winter Olympics, I was doing it on my own. And it was like everyone was like, what was it like? And I was like, honestly, y'all, I was just trying to survive. Like it was not just because the Olympics it's a massive tournament. It's multiple sports over the biggest, not only the biggest, highest stakes tournament for a lot of people. A lot of people consider this the pinnacle of sport because of the broadness of the tournament, but also, there's just so many things happening at one time in a 2-week span that then continues for another week and a half for the Paralympics. So it's just vast. There's just a lot going on, so many different federations. And so this time I wanted to approach it a little bit differently. So I did focus and narrow things down to women's basketball. I guess technically I did that in Beijing. I was covering the hockey tournaments, but the men's and women's tournament. So I've tried to take it a little easier, make sure I get some rest. That being said, I have been staying, so I'm in my hotel room right now, and I'm staying in Paris, just 2 metro stops away from the Eiffel Tower, which is really cool. So, the first few times I took the metro, which is the 6th line for anyone from New York City, or anyone who knows Jennifer Lopez, the 6th train runs all the way. Yes, exactly. And so On the 6th is actually one of her albums, but my grandparents lived literally on the 6th train, much more direct than her. Anyway, I digress. But
on the 6th line.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm on the 6th line again, so that was kind of cool. A little bit of feel from home. I was in London before I got here, so I got to catch up with the USA basketball team and Team Germany in London. Now, we didn't get to talk to players in London, which I was kind of bummed about, because Niara Sabali taught me some phrases in German that I've been trying to practice. And I was hoping to do that in London before we got to the Olympics. And then, of course, we'll talk about Niara in a little bit, but I haven't gotten to do that with Niara yet, but hopefully she'll give me an update on how my German is. But so I went from Phoenix All-Star Weekend went home to New York just for a little bit. Then I went to London, and then here in Paris. And Paris has been my main stay. I've been traveling back and forth to Lille on the kind of train. It's about an hour, a little bit more than an hour. And there's also like an indirect train or bus, and that's about 2 hours driving. So it's not terrible, but it definitely is a commitment.
So you've been traveling 1 hour, like 1 hour
one way, yeah,
one way, and 1 hour another way. So basically every other day. Shoot.
Yes. So I didn't go for day 2. And unfortunately, just because of the travel and like having to sleep eventually, I didn't get to make it to the pool play for Serbia, China, and Puerto Rico, which I was really gutted about. But again, it's one of those things where I really prioritize for this Olympics, just
Yeah.
doing what I can and not doing the most, which is my nature. So I was up in Lille for day 1 for I guess it's pool or group B and C, I think.
Yeah.
So that would be Australia, France, Germany, Belgium, the United States, and Nigeria. So
Nigeria.
those
Yeah.
are the teams that I have been watching. So I was there for day 1 and then also for day 3 of those brackets of that part of the bracket. So got to see some really great basketball, and we're going to get into that in a little bit, so I'll skip over that. I haven't seen much else. I'm not too far away from where they're doing judo. Wrestling just started today, and so I kind of walked over there just on
That's cool.
one of the days that I designated as a day off. So I took a little walk from my hotel, and as I walked in, it was judo, and I don't know like the different weight classes and stuff, but there was a French woman who was competing. And every time, whether I'm walking the streets of Paris, I'm in an arena where Parisians or French, I should say, because they're not all Parisians, but where French athletes are competing, the French people are just loud. And you and I talk about a fan base. They're so proud. Everything that I've gone to, so obviously I prioritize women's sports, but I've also been able to go to judo. I've seen some things in other sports that I don't watch a lot of, and I love the support that the French are giving to their Olympians. That's number
They're
one.
being super loud.
Yeah, I love it. I was going to 3x3, and I was in line with people who were ticketed before I realized there was a media entrance that I was supposed to use. So we're all waiting for them to let us in. And I just hear just inaudible kind of shouting. And at first, I'm from New York. So I was like, yo, there's like a fight, like someone's fighting, I was like, it's going down. I was like, I don't know, like, do I need to move? Like, what's going on? Like, what's going on? But then it just started getting louder and louder and louder, because we were in like this street basically that they had kind of sectioned off for us to enter the venue. And then you hear like it comes in waves. And then I realized as I looked and turned around that people had like their phones, and it was the day that Leon Marchand, I think is the swimmer's name, where he was swimming, and they were watching it. So they're in line to get ready to see the women's French 3x3 team, but they're watching the swimming meet at the same time and then reacting, allez, and so it's been really cool. That's been really cool. And so, I feel like I'm just starting to really get adjusted to everything. I posted this on social media, but I think one of my personal highlights might be that I secured a Puerto Rico pin.
Wait, which one is that? Oh, the Puerto Rico.
Yes, Puerto Rico. So for those who don't know, I am on my father's side, and my cousin that I met here, I think we were talking about that offline, and then anyone who's in our Slack group knows, because I posted that I was catching up with family. I took a day and we went to Versailles, and I was with family. So my Puerto Rican side, we're from, and also there's a French connection, which I learned from my cousin. But I was able to secure this pin at the final day in Lille. I traded a pin that actually Ari Chambers had gifted me of the Team USA house here in Paris. And I was able to secure this pin. And I was like, I don't even wear it in my lanyard. I'm not trading this if I can help it. Now, if the Puerto Rican Federation wants to send me some more, I'd be happy to rock these.
That's amazing.
But yeah, so that's pretty cool. Another one that I'm hoping I can hold on to, although I'd be more open to trade this one. But this is the USA Olympic team flag pin. So you've got 2024 at the top, and then the French flag. Let me go to the solo layout. The French flag, the U.S. Olympic logo, and then the U.S. flag. So
That's
this one I
amazing.
really like as well. So yeah, gotten into. I mean, there's some people who have a massive pin collection. I'll tell you,
Yeah,
A'ja Wilson is killing it when it
she
comes to pins.
is.
She's crushing it. She's
I haven't
absolutely.
seen her pin collection yet.
Oh yeah, she showed us. They had a press conference before group stage started, and she was showing off. She said she on the boats for opening ceremony, she was attacking it. Like she was like, "I'm getting all these pins." Um, at the time, right after opening ceremonies, I talked to Sabrina Ionescu and AT Alyssa Thomas, and they were both like, "Yeah, we were just trying not to get." A cold. So we weren't trading pins. We weren't out there trading pins like A'ja. So now they'll probably have practice tomorrow. So I'll try to get an update on where they're at with their pin collection. But A'ja was about it. And then Snoop Dogg has his own pin where the Olympic
Oh my
branding
god, I saw that one.
rings of smoke. I was like, yo, that's hella dope and on brand. Who else? So Simone Biles and I think it's Katie Ledecky have specific goat pins that have been all the rave. So yeah, there's some pretty cool pins going around. But for me personally, this one's pretty sweet.
It's pretty special, right? It has just like a very special meaning for you.
Exactly. So this one's pretty cool.
Yeah, pin
So
trading in the Olympics is one of my favorite things. It's really
yeah.
cool.
And I know you know this. And again, those people who are subscribed to Black Rosie Media and either a part of our Patreon posse or subscribe to the Gold Medal Dispatch, you're a part of our Slack channel. So you know that I was able to tour the Olympic Village and I got to see a replica of the cardboard beds, which was so wild. Yeah, they were real cardboard. But I sat on the bed and nothing happened, nothing broke. So, you know, they're pretty sturdy. I thought it was also pretty cool that they have like like you can get kind of fitted for your mattress, like if you like a soft mattress, a more firm mattress. So they have all of these things that you can do in the Olympic Village. I know Allison Felix has been huge, and I guess she works with Pampers. There's a daycare center in the Olympic Village for parents who have young children in particular. So I thought that was great, really helping parents. But if I had to argue, probably more so mothers. But you know, just having a place. There was a salon and a barber shop at the Olympic Village. They have a post office where they can take a picture and then create a stamp. So
That's
then they
really cool.
can send things back home. I did buy some pins. One of my sisters wanted a surfing pin. So, you know, surfing is an Olympic sport, but it's not happening in France. It's happening in Tahiti. Yeah, it's in Tahiti. Check out a conversation we have with AJ McCord where she breaks all of that down, and make sure you're following AJ because she's in Tahiti for the Teahopo wave. And last I checked, they're still waiting for good conditions to hold the women's final. So
There's a bunch of resident surfers who
yeah. So it's been pretty good. Definitely some days where I had to lean into just resigning to, okay, sleep is a good thing, rest is a good thing. There's always things that you're going to want to do and you're going to have FOMO, but just focus on what's important. So that's been a little bit tough, but I think I'm getting into a good pace and right on time, Roberta, because we have quarterfinals and we're going to talk about that coming up. We do have a few other things in our shoot around that we wanted to talk about. And that is the next one that I want to talk about. So I mentioned 3x3. I've been able to attend some 3x3 games and it is so cool. So 3x3 is outdoor. It's, as it sounds, 3 players against 3 players. You have 4 players on the roster total, so 1 substitution for each side. But everything, and I guess I should have mentioned this, but you know, France is super old, right? We're in Europe.
Very old.
We're in Europe, and so there's just so much rich history in Europe. I was in London, as I mentioned, and it's just wild. Like, I mean, I lived in New York my whole life. Even Tulsa has some really deep history. Tulsa history is kind of in the early 1900s. New York history does date back pretty late, but not like to the 1500s and even earlier. And just to see that the Olympics have found ways to incorporate these iconic, world-renowned event space or spaces and make them event spaces is
Yeah,
so cool.
it is.
And
It's pretty amazing.
La Concorde, and I don't know the full history. I'll be better on the next podcast, but La Concorde is just they're just these places that look like palaces or castles
Yeah.
or places where like you can tell like government business was happening because they have these long squares. There's so much open space, and then they turn it into skateboarding,
Yeah.
BMX, and 3x3. So the
Mhm.
sights, the views are just beautiful. And earlier tonight for me, on the day that we're recording, Monday night for me here in France, afternoon for you, Roberta, right?
Yep. Yep.
um, Monday afternoon / night, depending on where you are in the world. The women's team 3x3, they got another Olympic medal. They won gold in Tokyo, and they won bronze this year. Now, this is one of those things where I think there's some conversations that are just kind of the US kind of gaze where it's like gold or bust. I think there's people wanting to have that conversation. I think there is a very real conversation, Roberta, to have regarding the really slow start, 0-3 for the women's
Yeah.
3x3 team. But I think also we can absolutely hold space for they got an Olympic medal.
They did. They did. And we're talking about a team that didn't, they had they lost Ken Brink, who has been with them for such a long time.
Mhm.
But I think the key issue here is the way that the US approaches 3x3.
Mhm.
You see most of the conversations that people are like, oh, just put in WNBA players, just put 5-on-5 players, but that's not how it works. You see teams like Canada that they have been investing on 3x3 in a very solid way, and they are able to dominate the scenario and play better than the US because 3x3 is not 5-on-5. It is basketball, yes, but the way that you play it is very different. So you have, for example, A'ja Wilson, who is an outstanding 5-on-5 player, but I don't know how she would do on 3x3 because, uh, she plays a lot in the paint with rebounds, and that's something that can happen in 3x3. The same with Angel Reese. Like, her offensive rebounds would serve for like not a lot in 3x3. So it takes a while to develop that, and I'm so happy for Sierra Burdick, who has been in that
Yes.
3x3 scenario for such a long time.
Yes.
Um, I actually wrote a 3x3 story for another outlet about this league that has been created in the US, 3XPA. Shout out to Elena McDonald. We worked together at the Storm. And their goal is really to develop 3x3 FIBA 3x3 talent and help players earn FIBA points because that's very important in assembling a roster and qualifying for a tournament. So I think that the way that in the last Olympics, the U.S. used those players who have been in the 3x3 circuit for a long time to qualify, and then they didn't really bring them to the tournament, and
Yep.
another team won gold.
Yep.
I think that if they had leaned into those like Sierra Burdick and Haley Van Leef, they have been with 3x3 for a really long time. But there are other players like Blake Diedrich, and it's really sad that Cambrin couldn't go because she's really good at 3x3.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that the US could have had a much stronger start and potentially gone for the gold if the US had a better development in the 3x3 scenario. And that's something that people still need to learn in the US. It is that FIBA 3x3 is not WNBA, NCAA. It's very different. It's a different pace and it's different rules. Qualification for those tournaments is very different. You need to be involved with 3x3 in order to
Yeah.
qualify.
Yeah. Yeah, I love everything that you're saying there. And it's something that honestly I'm still very much learning. And so I love that you brought that up because your expertise and your from the story that you wrote, it really aligns with a lot of what we heard from Jordan Robinson, who just recently joined us on Black Rosie Media. If you're not familiar with Jordan, you should be, but she's amazing. She does so much great storytelling in women's basketball, in women's sports. And she was able to join us really within minutes of the USA women's 3x3 team winning bronze, and to get her perspective as someone who has been on the stops as a broadcaster, someone who's in the arena calling the games, was really great. And then we got to learn a little bit more about Jordan's story as well. So make sure you check that interview out. We did it live, but it's of course archived on Black Rosie Media YouTube. One more thing in the shoot around, and this is something that Roberta, we're going to kind of tease only because one, it's a very hot topic, at least if you look at Black Rosie Media social media. But two, it deserves a lot of thought. And someone commented on something we posted regarding nuance. And I think that was the perfect word. There's a lot of nuance to this topic. But since Satou Sabally gave us a quote, or she gave us a few minutes of her time to talk, I wanted to mention it. Satou Sabally playing for Team Germany. Again, we're going to get into that because I really like how Germany has been playing. I like how Satou has been playing. And she was asked about what does it mean to have Team Germany in their first ever Olympics competing the way they are, and how can that help grow the international game and the international flavor. I'm paraphrasing, but we have the full audio and we will be using that at Black Rosie Media to help build the conversation around prioritization. But so she was asked Roberta about that. And I thought it was surprising, but also I was like, yes, when she immediately went to prioritization, because she didn't take the low hanging fruit. It was really, in my opinion, I can speak to Lindsay, who's the other reporter. I know you asked about other reporters. I never got to that, but yes, I have been meeting other reporters, and that's another cool thing about coming to these big tournaments is that you get to meet other people, and so that's been really good. But Lindsay is one of the other reporters that I met, and she asked the question, and it seemed to me like she thought it was gonna be like a fun, like, yeah, let's lean into international play and international players. And Satou was ready. She was not taking the bait. She wanted to have a conversation about prioritization. And we posted the audio clip as well as like a pull quote from Satou Sabally. And I'm going to go over a little bit of it right now because I really just think this is an important conversation when we talk about growing the game. And so, again, that's what Satou was asked. And in part, I'm not going to get into the whole quote, but she says, as a player, I obviously criticized the prioritization rule that the WNBA implemented. Now, she's talking about the 2019 collective bargaining agreement. For those who don't know, Satou Sabally was taken, I believe it was second overall, right? Second or third overall in the 2020 draft. So this CBA predated her coming into the WNBA. Just want to make that clear. I think it's really bad to punish international players, especially coming from France. They can't come over at all anymore. That's just unfair. She goes on to say, I think that Cathy Engelbert, who is the commissioner of the WNBA, can also make a stance and of really wanting to incorporate international players, which without question, I think we can all agree, Hobart, that it's the best CBA that the WNBA has ever seen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we also know that there were players, including those who were at the negotiation table, who were very clear on what the next groundbreaking CBA needed to look like. And I think Satou is saying, yes, travel, which again is, I don't know that it's a moot point because I still have a lot of questions about how travel.
No, definitely not.
Travel, retirement, care for families and family planning. Those are all things that we've heard. And Satou now along with Gabby Williams, Breanna Stewart has said this several times. They're saying that they want prioritization and how international players are treated to be a part of
Mm-hmm.
negotiations. So, Roberta, I know you and I have talked about this offline, and you're going to do some deeper diving into this.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to let you have last word on prioritization, reacting to Satu's comments. And I know I haven't dropped the on digital or on social media, but Gabby Williams also had some electrifying comments that she gave Black Rosie Media.
Yeah. Working at the Seattle Storm the past 2 years, we had Gabby Williams. They had Gabby Williams and Breanna Stewart. Breanna Stewart was also very fired up about it, and she was also, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to play in the WNBA because I'm playing in I think Turkey. I don't remember exactly. So Breanna Stewart has talked about it. Gabby Williams has talked about it. Now Satu is being very. She's not. She's using all of the words. She's mentioning Kathy Engelbert by name. Because international players know they feel it, and they know that the way they are treated is different. And this is something that I'm very passionate about because I'm international and I follow international players. Like I started following women's basketball through international players, and there has always been a difference in treatment. So it starts. It's such like it's nuanced. It really is, and it's not only changing the prioritization rule. It comes with having a consciousness that other countries matter, and there is really good basketball elsewhere. The WNBA not having Gabby Williams is a huge loss for the WNBA, for the team that she could play, and for fans. And she's a highly marketable player. She is very loved by fans. People are like, oh, yeah, no, but we already have that in the WNBA. It can be better. The WNBA is still building itself. And having such like a charismatic player like Gabby Williams would take the WNBA even a step further.
I
Anyway,
mean, exactly. Or Maureen Johannès, who's her
Johannès, yeah,
teammate,
yeah,
electrifying player,
yeah,
and
exactly.
has done so much and is beloved by the New York Liberty. Becky Hammon
Yep,
was like, we don't have an answer for her.
exactly, exactly.
And this is someone who is now back to back WNBA, not world. Sorry, Mark. WNBA champions.
Yeah, yeah,
There is something to that. And again, at least in part, the skill that we're seeing for those players with longevity in the WNBA, where does that come from, Roberta? Them playing
yep,
internationally.
exactly. And so the thing that I love about the Olympics is that it highlights several issues that the U.S. faces, and how the mindset of U.S. first really it is detrimental to the country itself and to business here, because it's not basketball, but you have the Noah Lyles situation where he goes like, world champions of what? The United States of America. And then the NBA players get really mad at him, and then he goes and wins Olympic gold. But anyway, I concur. I think that the issue with prioritization is that there are two things. First off, American culture of believing US first, and that the best talent is in the US and there's not a lot coming from outside. And second, owner greediness.
Ooh, yeah.
Owner greediness is huge, and I say that because I saw a comment from someone closely related to a WNBA owner on a Facebook fan group, saying that, because people were like, yeah, no, privatization is not good. And this person said, well, players wanted money. We gave them money. Now they have to come and show up to work. Like, first off, that's not a lot of money for what they have to do for you. Second off, that's not how you approach. You're not giving them money. They are working for it. They have
Right.
been investing. So It's two things. First off, it's something that's rooted in the American essence of
Yes.
believing that it's US first and America is better than everything,
Yes.
and owner greediness. I think
Yeah.
that ownership in the WNBA is still very old school, and we saw up until like a year ago, there were team owners who were against flying charter. So if they are against their own American players, imagine what they're like with international players. The thing is
Boom.
that
That
with
part.
sorry,
No, I was just agreeing with you. That part. I mean, we've seen, and now I want to go even beyond just the WNBA, but it's not uncommon for international players. And I want to go like in the last 15 years. In the last 15 years, whether we're talking men's sports or, and definitely women's sports, it's not uncommon to have someone whose first language isn't English not have access to an interpreter through a
yep,
professional team that they're playing for. Major League Baseball, National Hockey League. You don't see it as much, or I should say that's my ignorance. I'm not as familiar with players who speak multiple languages that play in the NFL as compared to some of the other leagues. But we're not even in the United States and we don't have an official language, just by the by, putting that out there. We are not accustomed to making accommodations. Though we expect to be accommodated when we travel, we don't make accommodations for people traveling from other countries, broadly speaking, and definitely not who are working. And listen, if you go to Ichiro, Marta, Camila, these are people that
mhm,
understand English.
yep,
But there's a difference. Like, I understand Spanish. But if you're asking me to sign a contract, answer reporters' interviews in Spanish, I'm not going to be able to do that in a way that is comfortable, confident, and also things do get lost in translation. And I don't
mhm,
want someone or me even to say something in Spanish that is misrepresenting because of the translation,
yeah,
something that I didn't mean. So I can only imagine how athletes who are interviewed all the time, how they must feel. And when
yeah,
we don't provide, so again, in the last 15 years alone, we've started to slowly see a push for this. I think Major League Baseball players who speak Spanish in particular have been a little bit more bullish on this. And
mhm,
why is that? Because there are a lot of people who speak Spanish
yeah,
who are the elite level Major League Baseball players. And
yeah,
so they speak Spanish in interviews. They do interviews with reporters that can speak Spanish, and or they make sure they have a translator with them.
yeah,
Hanju had a translator, but the first season, her rookie year in New
yeah,
York, was a little bit different. It got progressively better.
mhm,
For a while, Johannès didn't have. She wasn't comfortable speaking to reporters. Again, not because she cannot understand or speak English, but she's one. Sometimes you have players that are self conscious about how they speak. And I know some people are going to watch this or listen to this and be like, okay, what does this have to do with prioritization? It goes and
that's
speaks to
everything.
it has everything to do, because again, we're not even making these accommodations for people in the workforce.
Yeah, and that's something that people are not sensitive about. I mean, we know for a fact that the WNBA has always put white players first. Not only the WNBA, but like the U.S. market in general. How long did it take for A'ja Wilson to get her signature shoe? And then you have, you know, a rookie who, yes, she's amazing, but she's already gonna have her signature line.
Paige Beckers is not
Paige
even a pro
Becker.
yet.
Exactly. So you can't say that it's not related. It's all related. And what I love about Black Rosie Media and the way that you approach the conversation is that prioritization is not only about basketball talent, it's about social economical issues and beliefs within the US and within the world, and they impact those international players greatly. If those players are not interviewed, people are not going to see them. International players cannot make NIL money if they're not seen, they're not gonna be able, like, industries are not going to know them, you know. I talked to Nika Mule about it too. She had some great things to say. Anyway, I knew we were going to keep that part short, but it's such a big, and that's something that I'm particularly very passionate about because of my background and because I experienced it firsthand. But yeah, I'm gonna happy to discuss that in depth for Black Rosie Media, yeah, with more detail.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see where you take the conversation. And it's honestly just a start because there's so much that, again, even as someone who's, I would argue, more conscious than most, I was born and am an American. I'm from the United States. And there is nothing wrong in admitting that
Mhm.
because of cultural norms, that
Yeah,
there are just things that are different. And I'll
yeah,
use a very simple example. When I went to the UK, it took me basically the whole time I was there, because it was only a 24-hour trip, to realize that if I was looking when I was crossing the street, I had to change which way I looked. Because if I looked this
yeah.
way, then I get hit by a dang car. You know what I'm saying?
I was
And
that
I'm using,
the same thing.
I'm using that as like a humorous. I mean, thankfully it did not happen, but that's how easy it is to be trained and conditioned to do something and then be placed in somewhere where the culture is not
Yeah,
even like vastly different. Like, arguably that's a small difference. But it is a change that can still
yeah,
have an impact for the better or for the worse. So
yeah,
I'm glad that we're going to get more into it. But now let's get into the conversation about quarterfinals.
yeah.
So, Roberta, we know we have the quarterfinals, as I mentioned earlier, starting up on Wednesday. I thought it was hilarious. They had this little ceremony for like drawing,
Yeah.
and it was so crazy. They had these little balls. I think they were like basketballs, but I think they were tin. And then someone, like, there were only two in each little bowl, and then so they rolled those around,
Yeah.
and then they picked one up, and then they picked up, and it didn't have the name of the team. They had to open it, and then they opened it, and then in there it was like rolled up. So then they
Yeah.
had to unroll it. It was like so dramatic. Anyway, all of that, and this is what we get. Everything starts on Wednesday. The first game, Germany, France. Now, these are two teams
Ooh,
in pool play that I really enjoyed watching.
yeah.
And knowing that one of their tournaments is going to come to a close in the quarterfinals is really heartbreaking for me
Mhm.
personally, because I think there are some great storylines. España plays Belgium. Again, I didn't get to see Spain very much, but I am absolutely gutted that we don't get to see Maite Cazorla play in the
Oh,
WNBA.
yeah, me too.
That's speaking talk about prioritization.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's we lost a good one there. But Emma Mieseman, who we talk about on Black Rosie Media all the time, because she's a fantastic international
Yeah.
player, has really been holding it down for Team Belgium. Nigeria. Oh
Oh my
wow.
God,
What a
what a
great story.
tournament, and what, like, first
They
African team to make the quarterfinals.
they lost one game in pool play, and because of how the rules work,
Oh,
they even though they have a better record than
yeah.
Australia.
This
Um,
is insane. Like, I think that I'm heartbroken. I mean,
yeah,
I don't want to assume things. You know, we can't assume. But when you think of the record, I mean, they beat Australia, and Australia's gonna have an easier path. You know, and that's not to say less about Serbia or Nigeria. It's just because, like, everyone knows that the U.S. is the team to be beat, right? So even though Nigeria did better, talk about meritocracy, they are gonna have the tougher path to
yeah,
move
the toughest. They're gonna have the toughest path. I think
forward.
that's fair to say. Yeah, just for reference, like the way that the pool, and I don't remember exactly. Um, I have this on our Slack channel, but I can't remember exactly how the poll went. But because The other matchups had their only option was for
Yeah.
Nigeria to play the United States because they weren't pulled earlier, where they would
Yeah.
have had an option. So that's unfortunate. But I think I tweeted this the other day. If every basketball team played defense like Nigeria played defense, the
Oh.
world would be a better place. I mean, I love defense, so I'm always going to say that. And
Mhm.
then Serbia and Australia. Woo! Really rough
Oh.
tournament for Australia.
Very.
That
Yeah.
first game in particular against Nigeria was brutal. I mean, it was
Mhm.
flat out brutal. And it was self-inflicted wounds, and good on Nigeria. This is what Nigeria has taught us, I think, Roberta. They are gonna do their darndest to make
Mhm.
their opponent make mistakes. And
Exactly.
when they do that, they are swarming, suffocating defense. They're
Mhm.
great at picking up at half court and creating turnovers in half court.
Yeah.
Um, and they are not if a team can play um a very like technically sound game, like more often than not the United States
Mhm.
does, then Nigeria doesn't have the offensive power to upend a team like the United
Yeah.
States or
Yeah.
even Australia or Germany or France. They just
Mhm.
don't. Belgium, I think, as well.
Yeah.
That being
That was a
said,
good game.
yeah, that being said, they are really great at doing what they do best. They're tenacious on defense. And when you can turn people over, when you can frustrate them, that opens up lanes. And that's exactly what Nigeria has been able to do. Okay, so
Yes.
we went through the pool. I want to come to you, Roberta, before we talk about individual players with ties to the Seattle Storm first and then to the New York Liberty. Is there a matchup that you are excited the most about?
Germany and France. That's the game to watch. That's going to be, you have Satu and Gabby Williams, and you have Leon Fibish, Fibish,
Phoebus, yep.
Fibish, and Marine Johannès. I mean, for Liberty fans, that's going to be like a must watch for sure because you have those two amazing players. And honestly, any game with Gabby Williams is a priority for me because I think that she has that mix of the modern basketball player who is uh, she has the speed, she has the strength, and she has the technique, and she has the leadership also. Uh, she makes such a difference on a game in general in itself, and just her presence there changes the way both the team she's in and the team that she's playing against plays. So Germany versus France for sure. I think it's gonna be. I feel like France is gonna be very fired up by the fans. When I mean you saw how the fans were behaving in a positive way towards the French team. So I do think that France is gonna come, full force, and I do believe if I had to bet, I would say that France is going to be an extremely close game. I would not be surprised if we saw overtime. Uh, and I hope Miara is okay. I don't know if she's going to be able to play, but not having her as available as she could be definitely has an impact on the
Ugh,
German team.
yeah,
Uh,
that's been tough.
and yeah, so I think that this is going to be a great game. I wish you were a semifinal game. It really did. That's going to be the best matchup for me. I am excited to watch Ezine Kalu against the U.S. with Nigeria. I'm not sure that's how you pronounce her name. Just like she has been unstoppable, and I want her in the WNBA. I really want her to
Yeah.
come through because she has that basketball that's appealing to so many uh, audiences, and she crushed Australia. Oh my god! Like there, it was no mercy. There was no way one could stop her. I do think that. the US going to put a lot of defensive pressure on her. Uh, and just like in general, the US has an advantage in terms of like size and Kelsey Plum has been absurd in terms of defense. So I do think it's going to be a good matchup, Nigeria and USA. But I was talking to the other writers about the basket, my outlet, and usually what teams have to do, they have to start strong, like they have to lead up to like halfway through the second quarter, because that's when the US kind of like goes full speed, and like hits the accelerate pedal and goes full strength ahead. So that's what teams have to do with the US. You have to try to beat them at the start, try to force turnovers,
Yeah.
and yeah,
And that's exactly what Germany did early on.
exactly. That's what
And
Germany
then
did. Yeah,
they got a little undisciplined, and we heard from
yeah,
Satu and their coach Lisa Tomaitis that they tried to play like hero ball a little bit too
hmm
early when they really didn't need to. They just needed to stick to their guns.
yeah.
Whew, I'm with you. I'm really excited for that Germany France game. I'm also a little gutted that that's the early game. I mean, for me personally,
Me
it's great because
too.
I'm here. But for everybody else,
Yeah,
that's going to be a really great matchup. It also has me thinking ahead. Either way you slice it, um, the first two matchups, you also are talking about teams where their countries are extremely close to France.
yes,
Well,
yes.
obviously France, we're in Paris, so there you go. We know they're gonna have well-traveled fans because, well, they're
hmm
already here.
Yeah.
Germany, Belgium has had amazing
Oh
fans.
my
They're only an
God.
hour away from Lille. I'm very excited to see what they're gonna be like in Paris. España, Spain, also right there, Germany. So I
Yeah.
I I think like that side of the bracket, unfortunately they have to kind of knock each other out.
hmm
These
Yeah. And there's like,
eliminator anyway,
yeah,
no, stop. I mean,
those are
but also
no,
it's true.
those are all teams that there's a huge basketball culture. You know,
Yes,
uh,
agree.
Germany, you get like Dirk Nowitzki era, the Dallas Mavericks player. Spain, I mean Marta Sargai, Breanna Stewart's wife. She was an outstanding player, and I think sometimes people over take that for granted. But I
Yeah.
would love to talk about Marta a little more someday. Spain
Oh,
has
we'll have to do it.
uh
I said we'll have to do it. We'll
yeah,
have
yeah.
to do that.
I
Um,
so Spain
yeah,
has a huge. It's so good. Serbia also has a big tradition in basketball. European teams are so fun to watch, and I'm
so fun.
sad that there isn't a single Latin American team in there. But that's a whole other conversation.
I know, I know. It was heartbreaking. I mean, Germany, Satu in particular, really got under Camila's skin in the qualifier.
Oh my god! We still have nightmares about that game.
That was brutal. That was brutal.
We had the basket riders on the ground there, and that was heartbreaking.
I know. Oh man. Okay. So before we close out,
Yeah.
because we know we have our Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, and of course our to be named Seattle Storm podcast. We still have a couple of weeks before we have to come up with a
Yeah.
name for the second half of the WNBA season. Well, let's quickly, I mean, we've mentioned some of these names, but I want to start with you. Seattle Storm players in the Olympics.
Mhm.
Let's start with a player actually who we haven't talked much about, and honestly, I think has had a quiet Olympics, and that is Jewel Lloyd.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly, I well, I don't want to say that. Like, I don't mean that negatively, but I did expect to see more from her. But I think it has to do with the fact that this U.S. team has really been Stewie and A'ja. They are the ones taking over, and it's hard um, to be the main player in the U.S. unless you're Breanna Stewart and A'ja Wilson. So Jewel had some interesting games. She has not gone over 10 points. And I did some research. She went 3 games, all under 10 points. The last she has never had uh, a game more than 2 game streak going under 10. There was one. She went 5 games, consecutive 5 games under 10 points in 2019. But other than that, she never went more than 2 consecutive games, not being double digits. The thing is that she's not the main player on the team. That's the
She's
thing
not.
with the US team. The plays are not gonna be drawn for Jewel Lloyd, and the way that she has been playing, the shooting nonstop, that doesn't work internationally. And honestly, I expected to see less of that from Jewel, because she's a really good FIBA player, but she hasn't played overseas in a long time. So I think
Yeah.
that
Well, prioritization.
exactly. So I think that has had an effect on her game, and that's why I think she has not been performing as well as we see her in the WNBA, but she has shown up when the team needed her. You see
I
that
mean,
game
that's the
versus
thing.
Belgium.
Yeah.
She was there. She scored the 8 points that gave the US what they needed to win. And that's the thing with the US team and the US bench. You have all those powerhouses, and it's when one player is not doing well, you have this other player who's going to come in the great. And I think they understand that. I think they
That's
understand
exactly
who are
it.
the key players in the team. And all in all, we shouldn't expect to see Jewel in the US team. We should not expect to see the same thing that we see Jewel in the Storm team. And I think,
Yeah.
considering her role, she's just doing good.
Yeah, for sure. Now we talked about Gabby Williams, so just for the sake of this, I don't want to talk too much. Now, the last WNBA team she played
Yeah.
for was the Seattle Storm, so that's the connection there. Kia Nurse and Noah Quinn, quite honestly, we didn't see much from them, and it wasn't great.
No, no, it
Canada
wasn't.
really has to figure some things out.
Yeah.
I do have some audio that I want to post because Natalie Achanwa, who did not play, hasn't played in the WNBA for a little bit. First, after, if I'm not mistaken, giving birth to her child, and then I don't know, it just hasn't been able
Yeah.
or hasn't wanted to prioritize the WNBA.
And that's
Um,
in Minnesota, right?
Minnesota, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. But Natalie Achanwa, congrats on a great international career, has been
Hmm.
with Team Canada since she was 16 years old
Yeah.
and has seen the growth of that organization. Kianners didn't have a great tournament. I know that, this is her first full season coming back, or I guess not her first full season, but she had an injury a couple of seasons ago. And quite honestly, I think she's still trying to find her way back from that. And she, is another player who's effectively young, but still kind of a veteran for this
Hmm.
Canadian squad and what they're trying to build. So I'm curious to see how they do moving forward. Want to
Yeah.
go to Team Australia because we talked about this before the Olympics.
Yeah.
Lauren Jackson playing a role that, quite honestly, even if it wasn't written about before the Olympics, probably makes a lot of sense. But
Makes a
then
lot of sense.
I really want to talk, so we can talk about Lauren Jackson, but then I want to get your thoughts on Ezzy, because I think game 1 versus game 3, very different.
Very different. Before the Olympics started, I thought that those would be the Aussie Olympics. That's what I was thinking, but we're seeing something different. However, I do think that Sandy Brondello has been very smart in changing Essie's role by game. I
Mm,
think that Ezzy has also understood that she's very versatile in that sense, where she knows how to operate with each team differently. And we saw that versus France, right? The
mhm.
Australia really needed that win, and she did good in that game. So Ezzy is one of the most selfless people I've ever met, people I've ever seen. And if you ask anyone about that, that's what you're going to hear about Ezzy. And I think that that's also how she plays. And I think that that's how she has been playing. She plays, her collective game is almost unmatched, and she translates that into, you know, doing what the team needs from her. So defensively, she has been, oh gosh, my hair. Defensively, she has been a key player for Australia in this last game versus France. Like, she did what had to be done. Now,
Yeah.
kind of like what surprises me in this Australian team, and I know this is not a this is not a Sparks podcast, and that's going to be the second Sparks player we're talking about, but Steph Talbot.
Yeah.
Oh, so
She is
happy for her.
villainized by the whole country of France.
Yeah, yeah. Like, you know, people are gonna declare war and so Talbot has taken this role. She's and I'm talking about Steph Talbot now because I want to talk about another player. But I am so happy that she has brought that responsibility to herself, and she has been out. She had a double in rebounds and assists, and then she went and scored in double digits. She has been doing everything, and I'm very happy because she was playing for the Storm, but you know, I do think that she was misused at the Storm, and then she got injured. Now she's back at the Sparks, and she's doing really good. And she gets to the Olympic, and she's like, remember my name. You know, that's how I play. Give
She
me
had a short-lived career on paper with New York Liberty.
Yeah, exactly. So I am pleasantly surprised with Steph Talbot, and she's a player that I love watching. But sorry, go on.
No, I was just gonna say I like how you broke down A'ja and Steph, and honestly, after that first game, because you know there's another connection to the New York Liberty, which I'll talk about, but I might as well just do it here now. Sandy Brondello gets a lot of heat, and I've given her a lot of crap as a coach for Phoenix because I'm just like, Sandy, I know historically that your team will always find a way to get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And watching it gives me heartburn.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, and after that first Australia game, I was like, Sandy, I have been defending you to New York Liberty fans that are impatient and want somebody else. You are making it hard for me after that game. Yeah. I was like, wow. And again, we have to, I want to make this evidently clear. Nigeria did everything that they needed to do to win that game. Australia did everything that they could possibly do to lose that game.
Yeah. Oh my God, yes. Exactly. Australia could not do one thing right.
It was the turnovers.
They just couldn't.
The free throws were abominable.
Oh my God.
So this is not to take away from Nigeria. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. And again, Australia did not do what they were supposed to do. Sammy Whitcomb talking to her after that game was brutal. I'm thankful that she stopped, but also she was like, listen, because there's no cool off period. They come off the court in international play into the mix zone. And I'm like, wow, I will wait 10 minutes after being in an Olympic scrum. It's so different talking to the losing side. Anyway, Sandy made the adjustments, and I'm happy that to do that. The one thing you can always say,
coach, man.
she really is. The one thing you can always say about Sandy Brondello, even if it makes you uncomfortable, she shows absolute faith in her players.
Oh yeah, yeah.
She will find ways to. The first thing I'm making some assumptions here just from conversations I've had with her, but also seeing her coach and how the teams that she coached perform. She will take the time to talk a player through a slump.
Yep.
As opposed to that, like benching them is not her first option.
Mm-hmm.
It's more often than not the last option. She rather they go through the hard and figure it out. Now that's tough when you have an international tournament like the Olympics because they had 3 games to qualify for the quarterfinals. And that makes it tough. Her style can be tough, but she
Yeah.
stuck to her guns. She got better because she talked about it. We have to be better as a coaching staff, and I think that they did get better. And even Gabby Williams, after that game,
Yeah.
the way she said it is not how I personally would have worded it, but she effectively, I'll remix it to be more I'll just remix it. But what I interpreted her saying is that Australia was the first team that they played where France and the mistakes and the things that they needed to clean up, that they knew they probably needed to clean up, it bit them in the butt.
Yeah.
She said Australia was a smart team. They played a smart game and they were able to make adjustments similarly to how I was talking about Nigeria. That's effectively what Gabby Williams was saying about Australia. And that's huge because that was not a game that was ever kind of in hand for either team. They really had to fight. That was an epic battle in
Yeah.
full play.
Oh my, that was so good to
I
watch
think
also.
yeah, and I think that in a game like that, you have to give credit to Sandy Brondello and her coaching staff because you don't get a performance like that from a team if they don't know that their coaches have their back and have the utmost confidence in them.
No, definitely not. And kind of like talking about that, I think it's very important to bring out Sammy Whitcomb.
Yeah.
Like the way that she has taken the helms with this team, and I feel like it's very Sandy. I feel like Sandy gave her that power, gave
Yep,
her that
you're absolutely right.
responsibility
Yep.
of taking over the team. It's Sammy's first Olympics. It's Sammy's first Olympics, but when you look at what she does in the WNBA, she's very clutch. Whenever the Storm needs to come back up in the game, they know that Sammy is there with a very with much needed 3 pointers, and she has been crushing it in the Olympics. She has taken the lead, leading like with the team in points and assists, and she has been great defensively. And I feel like because she has taken that lead, Steph and A'ja, they know that they can like change things a little more by game. You see that there are games when Steph gets more rebounds. There are games when A'ja gets more rebounds. There are games when Steph scores more, and there are games when A'ja scores more. But Sammy has been that constant. You know, she has been. It reminds me a lot of how Sue was for the Storm. You know, like you always need someone a constant in the team, and I feel like Sammy has been that rock for them, and she has been that leader for the team, which gives the rest of them space to perform. And I think that also has a huge impact on Jade. Jade feels very safe with Sammy, and it allows her to kind of like, you know, even wobble a little bit, which she can do. She's super young, you know.
Yeah. I like what you're saying there because what Sandy did tell us after the game is that this is another thing. Sandy is not afraid to use a short bench. We saw that with the New York Liberty last year, and I get the sense that more often than not, she's in communication with her players. It's not like they're being benched and they don't know why. But she said, she's like, I had to go with my veterans, people who'd been there before. And I think it's interesting that you say that Sammy had kind of been given kind of an honorary veteran tag, even though this is her first Olympics.
Yeah.
But that's what Sandy felt that she needed in order for the team to effectively get to where they needed to be. And she was very clear that they wanted to do everything they could do to avoid any chance of having to play the United States. Speaking of the United States, I want to switch gears because I freaking love the hot take that you have for New York Liberty players in the Olympics. So we talked a lot about international flavor, and there is more international flavor representing the New York Liberty, and we'll talk about that. But I love this because I was asked on CBS Sports to give an MVP of the USA basketball through the pool play. And when I tell you, it was really hard because I have a podcast for New York Liberty fans called Gotta Get Up. I know what Stewie can do. And I predicted
I
on
remember that.
on the show. I've been saying this for at least a month and a half. Stewie will activate full Stewie at
Yep.
the Olympics, and then that will carry over to the second half of the WNBA season.
I
And
remember that clearly.
yeah, and so far that's what it's looking like.
Mhm.
And I will tell you what I said on CBS. I picked A'ja Wilson as the MVP for the New York Liberty for Team USA. Their stats,
Okay.
Roberta, are almost identical.
Oh my god. Yeah, like they both have 20.3 points per game.
It literally
They
to
both
the point three, to
literally
the
like
10th of a
they
point.
both have 2.7
Insane.
assists per game.
It's insane. It's insane. But if you look at their stats, Stewie leaps and bounds more
Yeah.
3-pointers and, of course, 3-pointers
Yeah.
made than A'ja Wilson. That's not really surprising because Stewie is like, she's a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
When you look at the rebounds, not necessarily
Yeah.
surprising because A'ja Wilson, that's what she does. She rebounds. And
Mhm.
when Stewie is on a team with A'ja Wilson and Brittany Griner and Alyssa Thomas, do we need her to rebound? No.
No. Not at all.
No. So ultimately, I said A'ja Wilson because I do think that the USA team, with maybe exception in that Belgium game, because we saw what Sab did. We'll talk about Sab in a little bit. Outside of that Belgium game, do I think that USA needed their 3-point range? No. So what was more important in the 3 games that we've seen? Rebounds.
Yeah. I see what
So
you're
that's
saying.
why. So when you look at their stats, which literally are identical, except in those 2 categories, I gave MVP to A'ja Wilson. But
Interesting.
you had a different take, and I like it.
Yeah, so here's the thing. So my hot take is that Stewie is the best FIBA 5x5 player for Team USA. And I don't know if the expression is correct. That's the hill I'm gonna die on. That's how I say it.
You got it.
Yeah. So why? So here's the thing, and it comes down to the whole international basketball thing that we were talking about.
Yep.
Asia has an advantage that many countries don't have, which is the height. All right. So when you look at the rebounding situation, Stewie has 6 rebounds per game. Asia has 9.7. They have the same 5.3 defensive rebounds per game. The same. Now, Asia has 4.3 offensive rebounds per game, and Stewie has 0.7 rebounds per game. Why? Because the U.S. relies a lot in Asia inside the paint, so she can get her offensive rebounds.
Exactly.
And if Stewie shoots, it gives her to do more from the perimeter.
Right.
So Stewie doesn't need to be there for the offensive rebounds. It's what you were talking about, like, sorry. It's Stewie's job in this role, in this team, is different from her role in the Liberty, because she has A'ja Wilson right there. She has Brittany Griner. And honestly, it would be a misuse of her. Cheryl Reeve would be misusing her if she put Stewie more in the paint, because Stewie can shoot, Stewie can do other things. I do think that Stewie is a defensive force in the U.S. team, and
underrated,
absolutely underrated. She has less steals than A'ja, but I still think that Stewie has that advantage, and it comes down a lot to international experience. Stewie still plays overseas. I don't think A'ja ever played overseas. I don't think so, because when A'ja was drafted, women's sports and women's basketball was already in the tendency that lots of players did not need to go overseas to make more money. They have more sponsorship. In 2016, when Stewie was drafted, she still needed to go overseas, and she still does. She likes to play internationally. She enjoys that game, and she knows exactly how to play France. She knows how to play Belgium. She knows
Yep.
how to play Germany. So for those games
Yep.
where you have very strong FIBA players and you have defensive players, Stewie has an advantage. And and I think that it stood out this the last US game. I don't remember if it was Belgium or I think it was Belgium, that A'ja took some time to get into a rhythm, and Stewie took over, and she was like. So I think that Stewie is the key differentiator in that
I
team.
agree.
And I'm not saying that to minimize A'ja by any means. Like I
No.
think honestly, WNBA, A'ja is the MVP. I'm like, just give her the MVP. There is no beating A'ja in the WNBA, you know. And the thing is that like she stands out in the WNBA right now. In the Olympics, she doesn't necessarily stand out. She is side by side with Stewie, and that's
She's
because
right there. Yep.
it's because it's a different kind of basketball.
I love this take deeply and thoroughly. Like I love it. I was asked to give an MVP through pool play, and I stand on my decision with A'ja. And I think we are basically agreeing. And that's why I said I love your take, because and this is what I say for to New York Liberty fans on Gotta Get Up all the time. We need Jonquel Jones on the New York Liberty to feel like she's the MVP of that team.
Yes.
Because that team needs Jonquel Jones to be in the mindset that she's the MVP of that team.
Absolutely.
The reality is that the leader of that team right now is Stewie.
Yeah.
The leader that's coming up right behind her for the New York Liberty is Sabrina Ionescu. And what have I been saying for years? I'm like, give her the keys.
Yeah.
and I was like, even when I was like, listen, I don't know. It wasn't looking so good for Sab at times last season, but I was like, I'm sticking to it. She has to take ownership of that team. And Sabrina Ionescu has shown that she can do that. And you have another part of your hot take, which I agree with, because Sabrina Ionescu's game, she will not be an MVP candidate this season. She won't be. And I don't think she should be. If the New York Liberty were to give an MVP, she's definitely in the running.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But where I wish voters would take more care when it comes to voting most improved, because if ever there was a player that without having been injured the prior season is improved, it's Sabrina Ionescu.
Yeah. And Sabrina, I think that people take,
Yeah, Sabrina was arguably healthy until she played in Connecticut. She talked about getting hip checked. She was healthy the majority of last season and was great.
Yeah.
Or she was really good, I'll say. She's been great.
Yeah.
For the New York Liberty this WNBA season. And she won't get the credit because, you know, she's the originator of the Caitlin Clark treatment. And I mean, she's the originator. You can take that any way you want, and that's probably exactly what I mean. I'm gonna let you figure that. I'm gonna let those who are listening figure out how you feel about that. But let's just talk in facts. And the OG is Kelsey Plum.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. Because I feel like people forget what Kelsey Plum was, what the Kelsey Plum phenomenon was like in the NCAA.
Right. Well, you're in Washington, so you get it.
51. I was in New York still. I still was in New York at the time. But I did, I mean, you know, 51 points. How can you not talk about Kelsey Plum, you know? And she had that stardom about her. And she had that, you know, Kelsey Plum, Sabrina Ionescu, and Caitlin Clark. They both had that thing where they were like, exceptional, out like a whole other world apart from everyone in college. They get to the WNBA, they were like, oh, we need to grow some muscle here. We need
right. And here's the thing, we also have to remember that both Sab and Plum had injuries, injuries.
Exactly.
And so honestly, like people tried to trash them as like busts, and I'm like, bro, they were hurt.
They got hurt, and I think that honestly, I am very happy that Caitlin Clark hasn't gotten injured because there have been a few scares. The speed that she used, the pace that she played in Iowa, she tried to replicate in the WNBA. It did not work in her favor. We saw her
Gonna
taking
get
some very
muscled
harsh
over, to your
falls.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, we saw her taking very harsh falls. We saw her like having some twists in her ankles. It could have gone really bad, but I feel like today, college players already have that idea of the WNBA physicality, so she had already been preparing for that. But Kelsey Plum and Sabrina Ionesco felt that very strongly, and they got injured like as soon as they got to the WNBA. And I am, and again, I am very happy that Caitlin Clark did not make the U.S. team because she would have, and I say that with a lot of love in my heart, because she would have, I'm saying that she would have struggled. Look at that game.
Sure.
Look at that game.
She's not ready for
against
international competition.
that game against Germany, that the U.S. really struggled, and Germany was forcing the U.S. to several turnovers, and they were, taking advantage of those turnovers. What is the main thing that Caitlin Clark struggles with in the WNBA? Turnovers. The U.S. playing in such a short, a short tournament where turnovers can be like,
Killer. Just ask Australia.
Yeah, so exactly. So I think that it would jeopardize the US, but most importantly, I think that Caitlin Clark could come out of these Olympics injured. And because of the way that she plays and the way, if people think that WNBA players were being mean to her, people would declare war against several countries if Caitlin Clark was playing, because people like, it's basketball. This is basketball. This is the Olympics.
It's the Olympics. And just because sometimes I like to be a little petty and messy, I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you saw, but I guess someone for the first USA game had a sign that read,
"Oh my God,
you can't beat us without Caitlin Clark." That was the largest margin of victory over Japan. Yeah. That was their largest margin of victory in the entire tournament. So
yeah, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, are you trying to embarrass yourself? Are you like, are you adding like, fuel to the fire?
They just wanted some screen time, obviously.
Yeah.
Anyway, but you talked about injuries, and unfortunately for New York Liberty fans, we have to talk about it. Niara Sabally, through 2 games for Germany, was their second leading scorer behind her older sister Satu, and she was the second leading scorer for Germany, even though through 2 games, even though she only played 1.
Yeah,
that's how good she was.
Yeah.
In her Olympic debut, in the German Olympic debut. She actually scored the first 2 buckets. She scored the first points for Germany. That's going to be a fun fact. Little women's basketball trivia. She looked so good, and and then she gets her friendly fire, kind of going down to reach for a ball, and Leo Fibic kind of hits her whiplash. Lisa Tomaitis, head coach of the German national team, did confirm that she's in concussion protocol, that she could potentially be available for the quarterfinals, but as of the last game on Sunday, I guess that was, she is in concussion protocol, and you hate to see it. I'm just glad it wasn't something else, because originally I thought she was walking off with help and assistance, because maybe she also rolled like an ankle or something. So gutted for Niara, but she played so well in game 1 before her injury. 16 points she was able to get. And then a scare, I know. A little bit of a scare with Leo Fibic. She is expected to be okay and available for the quarterfinals, but maybe got the wind knocked out of her. Lisa Tomaitis said she didn't see the play. I saw Leo with kind of a towel around her arm. But she also might have like hit that arm or got it jammed into her midsection, ribs, or something like that. So banged up for sure. But we are expecting Leo to go, unlike Niara, who's not. It's not likely, and that's too bad. We also have seen Marine Johannès. Now, Marine continues to be electric. She did not. She had 6 points, I think, in that game against Australia. So we're gonna need to see a little bit more Marine step up when they play Germany. I think this is a game that's almost made for a player like Marine Johannès, but we know, who is it? Dano, who has that classification. If they were going to rename the Enrique category, it would probably be named Marine, because she takes an insane amount of shots, and it either is splash city, looks beautiful, hang it in the Louvre, or it is the ugliest thing you've ever seen in your life. There's like no in between with Marine Johannès.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you, like, what are your thoughts on that last play by France where like they could have, like, I don't know if tied or something, get a little closer, but Marine just like threw the ball. I mean, we know that that's her thing. We know that that's what Erica does. We know that's what Jewel does, and that's what Marine does. But could they have been more careful? Could they have tried something different? Perhaps give it to Gabby or another player who could.
I think it's fair to criticize, of course, the last possession. That being said, I honestly think if you looked at the 3 to 5 possessions before that, you could probably say the same thing. And so then Marine doesn't feel that pressure to heave that shot up. Was I mad at it? I mean, again, I know I've watched enough Marine to know that I'm not going to judge until I know whether the shot goes in or not, because sometimes it's hella ugly. So I didn't really have an opinion on that. I did think the poise, and Gabby and Marine all talked to me about this after the game. The poise just wasn't there, flat out.
No, it wasn't
down the stretch, and
that's different.
Yeah, it was all poise for Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, you talked about Sammy Whitcomb. I said that we talked to Sandy, and that what she said is that she went to her veteran. Steph Talbot was getting booed. And it was a very pro-France crowd, as you can imagine, in Lille, and they wanted nothing to do with Steph Talbot, and she sunk those free throws like she was unbothered. I love that for her personally. So with Marine, I mean, you don't want her to stop shooting. I think that she sometimes can lose her confidence, and that's something that Sandy has had to manage with the New York Liberty. You don't want her to stop shooting, and I just always want Marine to find ways to get her engine revved by doing other things as well. Sometimes she kind of floats into oblivion and removes herself completely, which effectively means that now it's 5-on-4. And I want her to stay a little sharper sometimes when she doesn't have the ball, because she has the quickness. She has the IQ that if she even just flashed and cut more, even if that's not making an opportunity for her around the rim, because she's such a dynamic player, you have to be honest. You have to play her honest and truthful when it comes to defense, which then can open things up. And I think that's just the maturity that's going to come with Marine as she continues to play.
I agree.
She continues to be an electric player. I mean, we pretty much talked about everyone else. I also put Kia Nurse on there. We talked about Kia earlier. Of course, she was a New York Liberty draft pick, has bounced around a few places now, but not a great Olympics for Canada.
No, not really. No, and I feel like their problem is that they try to emulate the US game a little bit, and that's not the reality.
Yeah.
That's not the best style for the players. Again, the US plays in a certain way because they also on one-on-one there's like a lot of advantage, but on the 5-on-5 not many countries can emulate the US, and each country needs to find their own way of play, which is what Germany did, France did, and Nigeria did, and they succeeded. So I think that Canada kind of needs to, because there's a connection, like there are so many players who were in the WNBA and CAA. They try to emulate that US game, but it does not work on their favor.
Right. I agree. Well, that will get you ready for the quarterfinals starting Wednesday here in Paris, France.
Woo.
I'm super excited. We have we've been able to do get a lot of audio, and I expect to get more. I'll be there all day. From the first game starts at 11. I think the last
I'm
one
jealous.
like 9. So I'll be there all day. If you are not already subscribed to the Gold Medal Dispatch, make sure you do that. Roberta has already written a few pieces that have gone up to our subscribers. And as I've mentioned, we are also we have a Slack channel. And so a lot of my first posts, especially when I'm out and about, are going to Slack first because I'm trying to remove myself from social media while also still engaging more deeply and truly with our fans over at Black Rosie Media. So if you're not already subscribed, subscribe to Gold Medal Dispatch, our pop-up newsletter. Roberta, we know we're working on a story for prioritization. Anything from Beta Basket or elsewhere that you want to plug that you have coming up?
Honestly, I have been trying to work on this community building sort of mindset. We have, internationally, we use WhatsApp a lot. So we have a WhatsApp community where I send in updates. So I haven't really been using Twitter much during that time, except for my own personal. I'm gonna start. I actually have some stuff coming out today for Beta Basket for the quarterfinals. Just like the Olympics are, it's like so much at the same time. I really wanted to appreciate the other Brazilian teams, and honestly, I was very focused on gymnastics. And Rebecca
Not bad,
Andrade,
not bad.
Rebecca Andrade won gold today. But with the quarterfinals, because it's less teams, I'm gonna be able to focus on more, a little more. But Rebecca and I, Rebecca is one of my contributors. We've been commenting the games on Twitter, and I want to try to kind of like I want to do an overview. And yeah, if people want to follow Beta Basket on social media, it's beta_basket. Yeah, just staying active, and it's like I said, doing what we can, not everything. Trying to,
It's so hard.
it's like day job, writing jobs, trying to build my own business, and making sure that I stay married.
Fair enough. Add
Yeah,
that further up high on the list.
that's the priority of the list.
Yes. Fair enough. Well,
Yeah.
Roberta, we appreciate the contributions that you're offering to
I
us at
appreciate
Black
the
Rosie
space.
Media. Yeah, and for Black Rosie Media, so we have a few things that we've already posted. I talked about AJ McCord, who's covering the swimming competition in Tahiti. We had a great conversation with a primer on all things Olympic surfing. We had the 3x3 conversation with Jordan Robinson. That was super cool. We did that live on Monday night, so the replay's up and available. I did an amazing sit-down interview with Amira Rose Davis. Some of you might know her from the podcast Burn It All Down. She's also the host of American Prodigies, which follows Black and melanated, as I like to say, gymnasts, and season 3. So all that Black girl magic that you just saw on the podium, yeah, Amira knows a thing or two about all of those Olympians. So great conversation that we had before she headed back to the States. And we have some other fun stuff coming up as well, including, of course, anytime we have audio from the athletes. We can't do video, which kind of has changed how I have to do things because of like the rights. Like the Olympics goes hard in the paint when it comes to protecting the property. So we can do audio, but not video. So we have A'ja Wilson quotes, obviously the Satu Sabali quotes. Natalie Chanwa talked to us about retiring from international basketball. Marine Johannès, I know we have a lot of Marine fans that follow us, so we have some clips that we're going to share. And we have a few other interviews lined up with women who are working at the 2024 Paris Olympics in various capacities. So make sure you subscribe to Black Rosie Media on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe. You can hit the subscribe button. There's probably something buzzing and lighting up for you now. Also, subscribe to Gold Medal Dispatch. In addition to getting that directly to your inbox and access to our private Slack channel, it's also a way to support the work at Black Rosie Media. So we appreciate those subscribers. You can also check out Patreon if you want. But for Roberta and a very tired Erica L Ayala, who is so excited to hop in to bed and sleep after this, we thank you so much. Another busy day coming up on Tuesday, and we will have you covered right here on Black Rosie Media. Peace out, everybody.
Bye, everyone.